Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salalo Makudi. We're going to be switching gears now, and we'll be heading over down under to Australia, taking a look at Australian politics and an eruption of controversy in that part of the world. This comes after One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, walked into the Senate floor wearing a black burqa, reigniting her long-running campaign to ban full-face coverings. The gesture was slammed by Muslim senators as a blatant act of racism and disrespect, and sparking a rare censure motion and culminating in her suspension from the chamber for 7 sitting days. And to help us unpack the implication of the stunt and what it means for social cohesion, religious freedom, and Australian democracy, we speak to academic Fadlullah Wilmot, a leading expert on multiculturalism and political discourse in Australia, and he's joining us live from down under. Prof, thank you so much for giving us your time. Really appreciate it, and welcome to News and Views.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
There we go. Prof, I think let's jump right into it. For our listeners in South Africa and those that are listening from all over the world, if you can just give us some brief historical context on Pauline Hanson's use of the burqa as a political prop. This isn't the first time she's done it, correct?
No, this is. She has a long history of anti-Muslim, anti-migrant, anti-indigenous people rhetoric. Her first speech in 1966 warned Australians of being swamped by Asians. And she's focused her xenophobia on migrants, Muslims. She advocated banning the burqa. But you said they're un-Australian, they're security threats in spite of no credible evidence from Australian intelligence agencies. He called for surveillance of Islamic schools and mosques along with the Royal Commission. She denigrated Muslim politicians. She told a senator of Pakistani origin to piss off to Pakistan. He called linked Muslim to terrorism, and he leveraged fear of terrorism to build a political base that includes bans on Muslim immigration, monitoring of Muslim communities, and cultural exclusion. She actually incited a Senate inquiry into halal meat. As well as this, she's done many other negative things towards Muslims and indigenous people and migrants. So she's weaponized Islamophobia as a divisive tool, targeting minority communities. Hello?
No, very concerning.
Yes.
What does it mean, politically and also socially when a non-Muslim politician wears a burqa in parliament and proceeds to take it off the way that she's done, especially looking at the general sentiment around the world right now where there are rising cases of Islamophobia. We're seeing the protests that are happening out in the UK and just the general feeling and mood in some of the Western countries. Let's take this into context within Australia in itself. Is this a sign of, growing Islamophobic sentiment, or is it still, a specific group of people that maybe Hanson speaks their language?
Well, let's be clear. This has nothing to do with the safety of women or national security. The national security agencies clearly said this is not, there's no issue. And we actually initiated an inquiry into women's right to their children after a divorce. And she seems to be anti-domestic violence. She takes the side of the perpetrators rather than the victims. So she's no woman's campaigner. Now, getting back to this effort in Australia, yes, definitely there is a rising fall in Islamophobia. weaponization of cultural anxiety. And it's not limited to Australia, I'm afraid. It's where far-right politicians, you have Farage in the UK, sort of weaponizing problems within society, the economic disruptions from globalization and resentment that comes from the inequalities in society, the austerity measures. So this breeds resentment, and the best way to do it is to blame migrants and Muslims and minorities. And then, of course, the social media algorithms also have sort of increased this Islamophobic anti-migrant rhetoric. And these sort of cultural anxieties translate into right-wing ideologues forcing or not forcing, getting governments to move policy. So this ban on religious attire, which has been legislated in some European countries, like France, for example. So her Burka Stunt is just an outgrowth of this strategy to otherize the migrant, the Muslim, the person who is different, to blame problems in society, systemic problems in society, on other people that you can use as scapegoats.
No, very, very concerning. I want to segue a bit here, because there was a report that was released. I think it was sometime in September, mid-September, if I'm not mistaken, which indicated that anti-Muslim incidents in Australia have increased by around 150% since the genocide in Gaza started. There's been an upward surge of Islamophobic incidences in Australia. Has the genocide in Gaza almost exacerbated the Islamophobia in the country in itself? And are there, mitigating factors that the current government, led by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, have put in place to try and quell those incidences?
The Islamophobia Register Australia has highlighted that it's like Hansen have sort of increased the Islamophobia. And you are right, since the genocide in Gaza, there have been an increase in Islamophobic incidents, some of them even caused by Mossad in Australia. So you have this very strong pro-Zionist lobby in Australia that is causing this sort of division in society. So it is really concerning that Pauline Hanson has been able to use this, and that it sort of is a trend now to blame migrants and Muslims. But Anthony Albanese created, in the wake of protests by Zionists and pro-Israeli lobbyists, Albanese created a anti-Semitism envoy. And then he was, in a way, forced to appoint an Islamophobia envoy. And this envoy has made his report. So he has taken some action, but really to deal with the anti-Muslim hate in Australia needs far more work than has been done by the government. It's insufficient, and it needs a lot more action.
And speaking of action, just looking at the consequences here that this senator got, which I think it almost feels like a little slap on the wrist, really. A suspension for 7 days. Do you think this is sufficient, or there should be a more harsher kind of response by the Senate, to this kind of action?
I think yes, you're quite right. It's something like a slap on the wrist, because it can be seen as largely performative within a political context where so many politicians show very limited, genuine commitment to combating anti-Muslim hate. Her suspension is like a formal condemnation, but the broader political landscape tolerates, exploits Islamophobic rhetoric for electoral gain to divert attention from systemic issues. So this sort of performative censure highlights the disjunction between public statements condemning hate and the persistence of policies and political climates that fail to protect Muslim communities or address underlying prejudices. So the situation allows politicians like Hansen to continue to stoke fear, to increase division with few lasting consequences. So there needs to be far more sustained, substantive action beyond symbolic reprimands. It's not sufficient.
Most definitely. Let's talk about the Muslim community in Australia in itself. How have they received this latest stunt by Hansen? Are there calls for a more harsher punishment for her? What's the general sentiment from the Ummah in Australia?
I think as we can see, the Muslim reaction was to condemn the stunt and pointing out that it was a stunt, and that political theatrics like this normalize prejudice, increase risks of abuse against Muslim women, especially in public spaces. So this there needs to be more, but there needs to be much more action on this issue, and that's why the Muslim community has expressed its concern. And they're very disappointed in this rising anti-Muslim hate. But let us not forget also that the huge anti-genocide campaigns in Australia, although demonized by much of the right-wing press, and most of the press in Australia is right-wing, owned by Rupert Murdoch, who has spread his poison both in the UK and in America as well. Most of the demonstrators attending these marches in Australia, huge marches against the genocide, have been non-Muslims. So there is a great support among the general public of the need for action against genocide. But this is not reflected in the politics.
No, most definitely. I want to come back to the banning of the burqa in itself. What would be the legal and constitutional issues around attempting to ban face coverings like the burqa in Australia?
I don't think legally it would be possible in Australia. But the sort of continual rising of this issue causes people to be disturbed and worried and concerned. So and sort of scapegoating. There's just a tiny minority of Muslims actually wear the burqa or the niqab. It's a very tiny number of Muslims in Australia or in most Western countries. It's not a common, and it hasn't been a common practice among Muslim communities. Even the immigrant Muslim community is not a common practice.
No, most definitely.
But it does show division.
And I wanted to touch on that finally as a parting shot, a point of departure. My question would be, what should ordinary Australians take away from this, and how does this affect national conversations on identity, on faith, and just general belonging?
I think number one, we need to citizens to evaluate information, to enhance media literacy. We have to have pressure on politicians to tackle insecurity, inequality, social dislocation through safety nets, skills training, economic renewal, to reduce the allure of scapegoating, because you're blaming others for your problems. So we as the general society, including Muslims, have to put pressure on politicians, deal with the systemic issues. Then we have to, and there are a lot of work in Australia to foster inclusion, to promote real social cohesion, and to protect religious freedom. We have to, and we're doing this. There have been several legal actions against media that have up to now been unaccountable. We need to push for transparency on algorithms. We need to have proper content moderation. We've seen a lot of increasing demonization of Muslims and migrants since the must take over of Twitter. There's a lot of been deep platforming of people. In a horrible action, the Press Council of Australia was supposed to have an interview at the National Press Club of Chris Hedges, and pressure was put on the Press Club, and they did not carry out the interview with Chris Hedges, who's been a stalwart supporter of the Palestinian cause. And I think just to wind up, really, this Burka Stunt is really a symptom. It's a symptom of a deep, deep illness. The political use of cultural fear to obscure systemic inequality and to erode democratic protection. Without addressing this root cause, symbolic resistance will not prevent the spread of hate and division. Forward-looking, inclusive, evidence-based approach dealing with systemic issues of inequality, neoliberal economics, and what Yanis Varoufakis calls the techno-feudalism now emerging, is essential to safeguard the future of democracy in Australia and in the whole of the Western world, and even in places like India, where there's so much anti-Muslim hate as well, in Myanmar as well. So we need to safeguard this concept of multiculturalism, multi-religious harmony, social harmony, religious freedom in Australia and in the world. So the real issues, we have to hold politicians to account. And this will only come, as Noam Chomsky says, through sustained pressure from below. The politicians of the world are in hoc with the global elite. We have to, from below, push the politicians, like your foreign minister, Fadlullah, did with the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And inshallah, she's visiting Australia next year after Ramadan.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilmot. Really appreciate you giving us your insights, and I think laying the foundation for a very important conversation that needs to happen, as you mentioned, not just in Australia but in the Western world, in part of Asia, the Middle East, and also right here in Africa. I think it's very important.
Yes,
but thank you so much again. Really appreciate it.
Definitely. In Africa, you're going to face the same challenges, and really. What Africa needs to do is to have a united Africa with making its own decisions to overcome the division that has been stoked by colonialism and anti-Muslim hate.
There you go. Fadlullah Wilmot coming to you live from Australia. Jazakallah so much, and hope we chat again soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
There you go. As you heard there from Fadlullah Wilmot, Pauline Hanson's Burka wearing stunt isn't just a headline grabbing theater. It touches very, very deep on complex issues around religion, around identity, and power in modern day Australia. And I think her suspension also from the Senate, yes, to a level, it marks a clear rebuke from her peers, but the broader question remains, how do we reconcile freedom of expression with respect for religious communities? And what does it mean also for social cohesion when political protest take the form of cultural provocation? Because that's basically what it is. This is cultural provocation at its best. And I think activists, those that are in Australia at this current moment, could urge the Senate to do a bit more than just a 7-day suspension. I don't think it's harsh enough as a penalty for this kind of action, especially just looking at how volatile the world is right now. It's rising Islamophobia sentiment, largely stemming from a Zionist lobby, from the actions, of Israel in Gaza, because I think we can all agree that since October the 7th, 2 years ago now, there's been an increase when it comes to anti-migrant, anti-Muslim kind of sentiment, and it's only going to grow if actions like those of Pauline Hanson are not nipped in the bud and they're not dealt with harshly. 7 days suspension is like slap on the wrist. I can go back, say something outrageous or another act and be the same thing, but it gives those that believe and hold similar racist Islamophobic views a chance, a spotlight for them to come out and to not be as scared to voice out their Islamophobia, because they know that the repercussions are not that severe. So really, really concerning stuff, and very, very important lessons from the rest of the world to learn from Australia about how to not deal with this kind of situation. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, news and views will continue.